Okay, here is our final video for the Ming, China, and Europe at the end of the post-classical era notes. This section of the notes is going to be focused on Italy and the Renaissance. So unlike some of the other places in Europe that have centralized kingdoms, Italy is a little bit different. They have city-states. They have city-states like Venice, Genoa over here. They have city-states like Florence, Milan, and those city-states grow wealthy from trade. We've talked about this at length. They have a strategic location. They can participate in Mediterranean sea trade. They have urbanization. They're going to get all the stuff from trade and from the Islamic Empire first. Italy is also the first to get the plague, which initially is a bad thing, but because they get it first, they also recover first from the plague. So while Italy is getting over sicknesses by like the year 1400, the rest of Europe, like England, France, they might still be struggling with the plague. So since Italy gets information first, since they get trade items first, since they have money, and since they get over the plague first, those places are able to experience the Renaissance, which is going to be our next slide. And again, some examples of these city-states are Milan, Venice, Florence, Naples, and the Papal States of Rome. Papal States is where the Pope is. That's land that the Catholic Church controls. Also, I should point out that just like some of the centralized kingdoms in Europe, many city-states do collect tax money and they employ a military to protect their state and to protect their wealth. There we go. Okay, the Renaissance is going to start in Italy in the late 1300s and it'll last to the 1500s. The Renaissance refers to a cultural, artistic, and intellectual flourishing that happens in Europe. It's going to involve people creating art, creating sculptures, writing stories, building buildings with domes on it, and getting ideas from ancient Greece and Rome. So it's all about reviving all the old lost knowledge from the classical era, from ancient Greece and Rome. Remember, all of that information was preserved in the Islamic Empire at the House of Wisdom. And after the Crusades, and because of trade, all of that knowledge can flow back into Europe, and Europeans can rediscover some of this knowledge. For example, a lot of William Shakespeare's stories are based on ancient Greek and Roman myths. Like Romeo and Juliet is based on a myth from ancient Greece and Rome. I forget the name. I think it's called Pyramus and Thisbe is like the original Greek Romeo and Juliet story. William Shakespeare might not have written that play if not from all of this old classical knowledge from ancient Greece and Rome coming back to Europe. And again, Europeans get this information from Islamic empires after the Crusades. One element of the Renaissance is classical thought. Remember, classical means ancient Greece and Rome. So some people start to reject or question the teachings of the church a little bit because they're so focused on ancient Greece and Rome. They don't reject, I shouldn't use the word reject, but the church does not go away completely. It's just the Renaissance offers opportunities for people to think about things other than just going to hell or listening to what the priest says. The Renaissance gives people a chance to create something new and start to have some critical thinking, and not just always like listen to the church. And the Renaissance is going to support some of our future events that we'll cover in the second semester, like the Scientific Revolution, the Enlightenment, and the Protestant Reformation. So we'll get to that point later. I wanted to show you kind of what Renaissance art involves. The two pictures on the left that are labeled Gothic and medieval art, that kind of art was used during the Middle Ages in Europe before the Renaissance. So the one on the left is a picture of Mary holding baby Jesus in Christianity. Some things that I notice about that Gothic picture, as well as the medieval art picture, is that the people that are drawn don't look anatomically like we do. There's no shadowing on the face. There's no three-dimensional element. Baby Jesus over here has a really tiny head and really skinny arms. Babies don't normally look like that. Also, the angels over here on the side, they're about the same height as baby Jesus. So I would expect an adult angel to be like taller and not as big as baby Jesus. But the angels in here are drawn smaller because they're less important. They're not the focal point. In Gothic and medieval art, your size in a picture shows your importance. So things that are painted big are more important. They're not having the linear perspective and that depth. They don't have use of light and shadow. They also are drawing things aren't as they actually appear. I mean, this obviously looks like a person, but it doesn't look like if we took a photo of ourselves that, it would look like this. There's not a lot of realism to it. So Renaissance art, on the other hand, does depict humans as they actually exist. This Renaissance picture of Mary and baby Jesus has a baby that looks like an actual baby with the rolls and the thigh dimples. He's also, the size of a baby compared to this one, which has a really teeny tiny head. In real life, babies actually have quite large heads compared to the rest of their body. Our heads don't really grow a whole lot as we get older. Our bodies do, but our heads really don't. This one definitely is more lifelike. It also uses linear perspective or depth to show that these small buildings are farther away. They're not less important, like over here, they're just farther away. And there is definitely the use of light and shadow to make things look three-dimensional. So we want to know that 3 features of Renaissance art. One of them is that Renaissance art uses light and shadow and linear perspective to show depth. They depict people as they actually are, so things look realistic rather than like flat and unrealistic. And a lot of the content of the Renaissance art is going to show either like a scene from the Bible, because the church is still there, but it could also include scenes from ancient Greece or Rome. For example, this is a Renaissance painting. It's called The Birth of Venus by Botticelli. Venus refers to the ancient Greek goddess. I think Venus is actually Roman, because in Greek, her name is Aphrodite. There's a myth about Aphrodite being born out of a clamshell from sea foam. So this is showing the birth of that ancient Greek or Roman goddess. So since this picture is showing us something from ancient Greece and Rome, that tells us that it's probably Renaissance era. Plus, the people in the picture look like humans. They have realistic depiction of humans. They use light and shadow to show depth, and they have linear perspective. Those are the things that tell us this is a Renaissance painting and not like a Gothic or medieval painting. Here's another one. This painting is The School of Athens by Raphael. The School of Athens, meaning this is showing us a scene from ancient Greece. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the 2 people in the painting. I think this is Socrates, and I forget the person who's next to him. But all the people in this picture are meant to be figures from ancient Greece. Like I think Pythagoras is in there. There's a whole, like, if you really look into everything that's in this painting, it's really extensive, comparing people from ancient Greece to people that lived during the Renaissance. But anyways, what I'm saying about this painting is it shows content from ancient Greece or Rome. It also has linear perspective. It shows these smaller arches being farther back. So we know they're not just tiny in real life, they're farther back. So there's depth. Everyone is pretty much the same size. They all are drawn realistically. So it's not that like the biggest thing is in the middle, like everything is painted as it actually exists, and they're using light and shadow to show depth. So all of those things tell me this is a Renaissance era painting. Statue of David is Renaissance era. Mona Lisa is Renaissance era. David looks like a human. David, granted, is a figure from the Bible, so it's not that Renaissance people completely reject religion. They're just also interested in other things that make humans unique, besides just religion. This is also a Renaissance era painting. It's called The Ambassadors by Hans Holbein. Normally we go through each part of the painting in class, but I just want to point out first, people look realistic, so realistic depiction of humans. They are using light and shadow to show depth. If we look at the individual things in the picture, like for example, this here is an old guitar, also known as an oud, which comes from the Middle East. I believe also down here and up here is some navigational instruments. The astrolabe is up here. There's a compass. There's a celestial and a terrestrial Earth as well, or globes that show things on the Earth, but also things like in space, things in the stars that mariners would have to know when they're traveling. Remember, all of the maritime technology comes from the Islamic world. Um, Compass comes from China. A lot of cartography comes from Arabia. We have some arabesque looking rugs that come from the Islamic Empire and the Byzantine Empire. We have some velvet curtains. We have some like mosaic tile work that looks kind of like arabesque at the bottom. Because of the presence of so many things from other places, this painting is meant to tell us that the Renaissance didn't just magically happen in Europe. It only happened because stuff from other parts of the world spread to Europe. So the Renaissance wouldn't have happened without trade routes and without knowledge from the Islamic world and China spreading to Europe thanks to the Pax Mongolica during this time period. So that's the conclusion we're making based on this painting. Okay, and then second to last, Europeans also get dome technology. There's an architect named Brunelleschi. He rediscovers how to construct domes, reflecting a high level of engineering knowledge. Europe had this dome technology back in the classical era. They lost it when Rome fell, but it will get rediscovered by Europeans thanks to Islamic knowledge and engineering. Okay, and then lastly for this slide, we have humanism. Humanism is a term that goes with the Renaissance. It refers to scholars that are interested in the humanities, people that study literature, history, philosophy. Before this time period, everyone is focused on the church, going to church, paying your money to the church, going to confession, doing what the priest tells you so that you don't go to hell. Well, now, thanks to getting all this knowledge from the Islamic world, some people are interested in things other than the church. They want to study human history. They want to write books. They want to maybe like lead a virtuous life in public service, not only becoming a monk or a nun. So humanism is more about exploring the things that make us unique, our own history, our own thinking, and just focusing a little bit less on the church and doing whatever the church tells you. Okay, so I think that's it. Done with Renaissance. You'll have a couple questions to answer after this, and then you should be good for the day.